Easter is a love story about God's amazing grace and the power of this love story to change lives and the world. My father, Ernie Ledsworth, served as a 70 in Community of Christ for nearly 70 years. The last year of his life was difficult for him and our family. Dad lived in a memory care unit, my mother in the skilled nursing unit on the same senior citizen campus. My sister, brother, and I would roll Mother in her wheelchair to the memory care unit so that she could receive her kisses from Daddy. Often when we visited, he wasn't really aware of our presence, and he was very agitated. He'd repeat over and over again a different series of questions, like, "What did they do with my shoes?" "Where did I park the car?" Or, "Is it time to go to church?" One hot, sultry afternoon, when I pushed Mother's wheelchair in beside Daddy's wheelchair, he looked up at me and said, "Linda, did you know that God so loved the world?" "Yes, Daddy," I replied. "That's one of my favorite scriptures. I try to weave it into every sermon I preached." "No, Linda, did you know that God so loved the world?" No matter how many times I replied in the affirmative or commented, he'd insistently return to, "Linda, did you know that God so loved the world?" Finally, he smiled a smile we hadn't seen for a very long time and said, "Linda, God so loved the world that he gave his son. Isn't that marvelous?" "Yes, Daddy," I said. "It is truly marvelous." "It is, isn't it?" he replied. "You better make sure that you tell everyone." From John 3:16, verse 17. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him may not perish, but may have eternal life. Indeed, God did not send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him." Christ is risen! Almost as remarkable as the fact that the tomb was empty on Easter morning is that God gives believers the responsibility to share the good news of the living Christ with others. In the Gospel of Luke, the story is told this way. As the sun's early rays reveal the rolled back stone, it's a handful of women and one apostle who are entrusted with the story of God's marvelous love for the world. From the 24th chapter, verses 1 through 12, "But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified, and they bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, 'Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again?' Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths all by themselves, and then he went home, amazed at what had happened." Generations of people only know this marvelous story because of the testimony of these first eyewitnesses. The same is true for every generation. God depends on faithful witnesses to share this marvelous story. In Luke's Gospel, there are two distinct reactions to the empty tomb. The women believe and run to testify of what they have experienced. Peter's response is to be amazed, but there's no accompanying action. He is simply amazed and goes home. Joel Green's commentary on Luke helps interpret Peter's reaction to this resurrection experience, and I quote, "To be amazed is a characteristic response to the extraordinary, but it is neither tantamount to faith nor does it portend the eventuality of genuine perception or faith." Unlike the women, Peter returns home with no new message to share. In the discovery of the empty tomb and the belief in the empty tomb, God calls you and me, all people, to act. Easter morning is God's clearest indication that the world is now different and that those who follow the risen Christ are called to live differently. This good news is not simply something to observe. It is something that demands our response. Sharing the testimony that Christ is risen, that Christ lives, is the calling and responsibility of true Easter people. True Easter people share the living Christ with others, no matter who they are or what their circumstances are or how different they are from us. Several years ago, I attended a large reunion or family camp held on the grounds of Graceland University. Several hundred people gathered in the Commons area to register. As I walked toward the table to find my name tag and room assignment, I passed beside a woman sitting at a table talking with a small group of people. I slowed down as I approached her to see the tattoos from the base of her hairline, across her shoulders, down her back as far as I could see them, and all the way down both of her arms. These weren't black and green tattoos. They were technicolor, works of art, mysterious creatures in vibrant greens, reds, blues, purples, oranges, and yellow. As I passed by her, I thought, who invited this woman to this reunion? I looked for her during the week, but I couldn't find her. Perhaps because I only saw her tattoos and I didn't bother to look at her face. Near the end of the week, during a morning devotion, the tattooed woman stood before us to share her testimony. She had been raised by a single mother who kicked her out of the house when she was 15, and her mother's boyfriends began to pay attention to her. At first, she stayed in the homes of high school friends, and when she wore out her welcome there, she ended up on the streets, engaged in destructive behaviors, and ending up in jail. There was a Community of Christ woman who visited the city jail. The tattooed young woman said she ignored her because she shared stories about Jesus and prayed with the women. And the tattooed woman didn't want to hear, so she stood in the corner away from the visiting minister. The only way that the judge would allow her to be released from jail was for her to go to a halfway house run by the woman minister. She wasn't pleased about the arrangement, but was her only ticket out of jail. In Marcia's home, this young woman began to feel the hardness of her heart soften. She began to listen to Marcia. She let Marcia pray for her and eventually with her. Marcia invited her to a Community of Christ congregation where people loved her, accepted her despite what she had done, invited her to follow Christ into the waters of baptism, which she did. And then this beautiful tattooed woman began to sing her testimony of God's marvelous love for the world. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. In our comfortable Western context, we tend to see the resurrection as the epilogue or the ending to the story of Jesus' life and death. Through our ordered worships and well-rehearsed liturgical traditions, we work our way right up to the empty tomb on Easter morning, only to walk away from the experience as if nothing has changed. However, if we approach the empty tomb believing that the living Christ has the power to claim victory over the powers that perpetuate violence, injustice, dead impossibilities for many people who feel left over, rejected, or alone, then our interactions with others demands action. Several years ago at another reunion or family camp in Western Pennsylvania, during the morning fellowship service, a man stood up to ask for prayers for a woman and her granddaughter who were going to be baptized at that reunion. The woman was his next-door neighbor. They had started as casual friends, occasionally speaking across their front yards. Now they were good friends, and as a result, the woman and her granddaughter had asked to be baptized. Another morning, he asked for prayers for this woman's brother. He explained that her brother had been in a motorcycle accident, which caused him to be paralyzed from the waist down. Because he couldn't care for himself when released from the hospital, he was forced to live with his sister. He told us that each day he would go next door and help the woman care for her brother. He said that at first the brother was very angry, especially with God. But as they became close friends and he shared his witness of Jesus Christ, the paralyzed man's attitude was transformed and he was developing a personal relationship with God. The paralyzed man wanted to come to his sister's baptism, so prayers were asked on his behalf. On the afternoon of the baptismal service for the woman and her granddaughter, we gathered on the bank of a lake as dark storm clouds were moving toward us. Several people with guitars were standing by the shoreline singing. And Jesus said, "Come to the water, stand by my side. I know you are thirsty, you won't be denied. I felt every tear drop when in darkness you cried, and I strove to remind you that for those tears I died." As the woman and her granddaughter and the man who shared Christ with his family walked into the lake, it began to rain. And I thought, God must be crying tears of joy now. They came out of the water and we all clapped in joy. And because it was raining harder, people were moving quickly away from the lake to seek shelter. As they separated, I saw a man in a wheelchair. The man who had cared for him had just baptized his sister and niece, and he was leaning over talking with him. Then the man raised his hand and he shouted, "Stop! We're going to have another baptism." Then he and another man gently put their arms under the man, and they lifted him out of the wheelchair, and they carried him into the water as God's tears rained all around us. You see, once you walk up to that tomb and see it's empty, our roles as disciples of Jesus Christ take on an urgency to act. No longer can we stand idly by, observing those in need of the living Christ, those in need of a spiritual home, those in need of a friend who will love them as God so loved the world. God gives us an invitation this day to action. I believe God's call to us is profoundly expressed in the words of hymn number 275, "Leftover People in Leftover Places," written by Shirley Murray and found in Community of Christ Sings hymnal. Leftover people, disposable people, locked into prisons of drugs and despair. Poverty's children in poverty's spiral, locked out of learning and earning their share. These are the ones in God's upside-down kingdom. These are the Christ in their shabby disguise. These are the least and the highly unlikely, given a hope and new light in their eyes. Here is God's testing of true Easter people, spirited people with service to give, taking to heart the compassion of Jesus, feeling how others must struggle to live. We are a part of God's upside-down kingdom. We know the heart of the gospel's demand, taking our part with the leftover people, widening the space of the lines in the sand. My sisters and brothers, share the marvelous news that Christ is risen, the marvelous news that God so loves the world.